Valley News Live at 10.
Well, the weather outside still feels like winter, but spring weather and flood season will be here before you know it.
And as our flood risk increases, many local officials are starting to prepare. Valley News Team's Zoe Jones just got back from Kindred, where officials met to go over this year's plan. She joins us live now in studio with the details. Zoe?
That's right, Justin and Stacy. Officials met with community members to discuss plans because even though it doesn't look like it, spring is here, like Justin said, and the flooding will be here before we know it. Even though there has been more snowfall in our area this year, they believe flooding will be very similar to past years. Now, 20.5 feet is considered a major flood in the Kindred area, and right now we're sitting at just under 5 feet in the Cheyenne River, but that will rise as the snow melts. If someone is displaced from their home during flooding, they need to connect with Cass County Sheriff's Department. Also, officials say that there are several things that can be done to prepare for flooding season, but the number one thing is to ensure you have all the supplies that you may need.
Number one thing is start thinking about what your supplies that you need for flood fighting, and as well as your routes, because some of these areas get cut off and you have to make several mile detour, or in some cases people are taking a boat across a short distance of water to get to their car. So be thinking about that.
Officials also want it known that there is a flood hotline available for those in need this season. That number can be found on your screen. There will be another meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Harwood Community Center for anyone else who would like to get more information. Justin, Stacy.
All right. Thanks so much, Zoe. And we have much more information on tonight's meeting, including that phone number on your free VNL News app.
Before we get to flood season, though, we need the snow to melt. And instead, we have more snow coming in the forecast. First Alert Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Hutch Johnson has the details. Hutch.
Just a messenger, Justin. Just a messenger. All right, here's what you need to know. Quiet tonight. It's going to be cold, but not nearly as cold as last night. Fargo within 1 degree of tying a record low. 14 below this morning. All right, First Alert weather days Thursday and Friday. There's going to be a wintry mix and some snow working its way through. And then Friday, more snow, and heavy at that. It's prompted a winter storm watch through South Dakota, southern Minnesota, including the Twin Cities through St. Cloud. And this system's going to come with freezing rain, maybe even thunder too. Right now, 0 in Oaks, 6 in Grand Forks. And here's a look at what we're expecting. Late in the day, Thursday, generally dinner and points after light snow, mixed precipitation develop, mainly in our southern counties. That's where things, for the most part, will stay. Friday, the main event moves through. Folks, we're talking about very heavy snow, a little bit more icing, as well as that sticky, wet variety snow that will impact travel, and it comes with wind. This is an update from earlier. Now, our northern counties will have lowest impacts, and because of the cold temperatures, it'll be more of a fluffy snow. This will be that wet, cement concrete type of snow, good for making snowballs. Look at this, 5 to 9 inches. Some will see more than that across the I-94 corridor. Lakes counties will see that. 2 to 4 here in the Fargo-Moorhead area, with pockets a little higher than that. We'll have details on this, but here's a look at where we could have ice underneath that snow as well. Travelers, be advised, some serious weather heading our way next week as well. We'll have details on all of that and this here in a minute.
All right, thanks so much, Hutch.
Today, police in Tennessee continue their search for answers as to what led to this week's deadly shooting in Nashville. The police chief says officers met with the Covenant school shooter's parents and school officials, but have yet to uncover any specific issues or problems in the attacker's past.
The shooter was killed by police 14 minutes after the incident started, but because it was a private school, there was no school resource officer on site. That's something we found is also the case at local private schools, who say they have other measures in place to keep students safe.
Be prepared for what the day sends your way is the most important part of living out this role as a principal, but also knowing that not only my kids here, but everyone's kids here, and it's part of my job is to keep them safe.
We have much more information on what our schools are doing on your VNL News app. Now, nationwide, the shooting in Nashville has renewed the long-standing debate over gun control.
At the Minnesota Capitol, lawmakers are considering gun safety measures advocates say are long overdue. Carolyn Cummings has a look at what bills still have a chance in St. Paul.
Flags in Minnesota flew at half-staff Wednesday to honor victims in Nashville, a gesture of remembrance that's become commonplace in this country.
If you're tweeting defending an inanimate object today rather than talking about children, you are on the wrong side of history.
Governor Tim Walz's budget proposal calls for several gun-related measures, including raising the age to buy a military-style weapon to 21 and mandatory reporting of lost or stolen firearms to law enforcement. Inside the Capitol, the door is all but closed to those ideas. Just 2 have the best shot at passing, expanding criminal background checks and implementing red flag laws, allowing a court to temporarily prohibit someone from accessing firearms if deemed a risk to themselves or others.
We have an opportunity right now to do something about it.
Maggie Emery and her group Protect Minnesota have been pushing for these bills for years. She cites polling suggesting broad support for them and is excited they're close to the finish line.
Every time we see a tragedy like the one that happened in Nashville or even the tragedy that happened in Brooklyn Center over the weekend, we're reminded that gun violence is something that is present for everyone.
Thank you again for showing up.
On the other side of the debate, opponents of these proposals say they create hurdles for law-abiding gun owners, and they argue red flag laws deprive people of due process and don't help them if they're in crisis.
Doing something isn't as good as doing something that's effective, and just merely casting a wide net and infringing upon the rights of peaceful gun owners isn't going to actually resolve the crisis.
Background checks and the red flag law are up for consideration in a public safety spending package proposal that'll be ironed out in the next few weeks.
Now, key lawmakers said they represent the totality of bills his Senate committee will even consider, leaving others off the table. Meanwhile, tomorrow afternoon, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan will hold a news conference in support of gun safety legislation. Former lawmaker Gabby Giffords will be there as well. You can look for that coverage right here on Valley News Live tomorrow.
We're learning more tonight about the rail inspections out in Richland County after this week's derailment spilled hazardous chemicals in Wyndmere. Canadian Pacific officials say the railroad is inspected twice a week and electronic inspections are performed 5 times a year. That's more than double what's required. The railroad is back open tonight and officials believe a broken rail was the cause. Cleanup is expected to last well into next week. Meanwhile, this was the scene today out in Hettinger. Several cars from a BNSF train fell off the tracks this morning. Officials say no one was hurt and no hazardous material was spilled. However, one train car struck and damaged a building at the site.
About 80 travelers are stranded tonight after an Amtrak train lost power. The train eventually made it to Devil's Lake, where travelers got off. Amtrak's paying for their stay there, and there will be another train coming through tomorrow. Those needing to get to their planned destinations right away were offered a free flight. We're told no one was hurt. In Minnesota, the Department of Transportation is selecting certain rail improvement projects to support local economic development. DOT got 15 applications for the funding. 9 of those were picked, including the Red River Grain Company in Breckenridge. They'll get $370,000.
In a business where every second counts, local first responders say it's taking longer to get where they're going.
They say that's because newer vehicles are built to kind of silence the noise of the outside world. Combine that with distracted driving and phones. First responders say oftentimes even their loud, bright presence takes drivers by surprise.
Sometimes people just don't hear us or see us, and then when they do, it kind of makes them jerk off to the side or do something extreme if they move at all.
It can certainly be frustrating and lengthen response times.
The right emergency workers say you can pull over to the left if you have no other options.
The issue of banning books in North Dakota libraries is one of the big stories this legislative session. The Senate passed House Bill 1205 today. That's the bill involving explicit sexual material in public libraries' children's collections. What was passed today was a change from the previous versions of the bill. It required removal and disposal of that material before. Now it can simply be relocated.
It used to be that libraries and schools were safe zones for minors in our towns and communities. This is no longer the case. At this point, our schools and libraries are safe zones for activists.
That bill will now be sent back to the House for agreement on these new amendments before a potential final passage.
We have an update to a story we first told you about yesterday. War Road Warrior supporters traveled to St. Paul today to defend their name.
Valley News Team's Reed Gregory joins us live now in studio with the latest on that. Reed?
Justin, Stacy, that is correct. The Minnesota State Senate is set to discuss a bill that would ban the use of Native American imagery in high school logos as well as nicknames. Now, that is unless the school gets permission from all 11 federally recognized tribes in the state to continue using the logo. In a statement posted to the district website, school leaders point out that the current logo was designed by an Indigenous artist, and items that are sold with the logo help raise money for Indigenous youth. Now, they go on to say in 2013 and 14, the National Coalition Against Racism in Sports and Media recognized and agreed to the use of the War Road logo as respectful of Indigenous culture and people of the region. Yet today there exists legislation that is attempting to forcibly remove the Warrior logo. We have been in contact with the legislative authors and have requested local control. They're also asking for letters of community support. Now, you can find out where to send those letters and read up on our original report by downloading the free VNL News app. Justin, Stacy.
Leaders started the process of creating a new citywide master plan for growth today at their planning commission meeting. The current plan's from 2007. The city's starting a roughly 14-month process to create a new one. Today's meeting wasn't specific about ideas as much as explaining the process, getting the commission to start thinking about what they value most.
Right. So we have on the table connectivity. Right. We have on the table the manner in which development unfolds. We have on the table equity. Right. What else do we have on the table? We have infrastructure has to pay for itself. And discussion.
Expect to start seeing online surveys about the growth plan in June and a few times throughout the process.
You'll soon be able to find Narcan online and in local stores. Later here on Valley News Live at 10, we'll show you specifically how to use the life-saving drug.
I felt like I've been on the fence lately. Check out these fellas out here in the backyard when Hutch has more snow. They pay attention. Now, these are just tall dogs. There's a lot of snow back there. First Alert Weather Days for Thursday and Friday. They're paying attention. And First Alert Weather Days next week for another winter storm has Frankie saying, come on, man. Your forecast next.